Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about life that took me years of falling, failing, and feeling like I wasn't enough to truly understand. The difference between winners and losers is not talent. It's not luck. It's not where you were born, how much money your parents had, or what school you went to. The real difference between winners and losers is a decision made quietly, often when nobody is watching. A decision about who you are going to be when life gets hard. Because life is going to get hard. It's going to test you in ways you never imagined. It's going to push you, break you, and sometimes it's going to bring you to your knees. And in those moments, you're going to find out exactly which side of that line you're standing on. I've met a lot of people in my life. Rich people, poor people, famous people, unknown people. And I've learned that winning and losing is not a permanent state. It's a pattern. It's a habit. It's a mindset you carry into every decision you make. Winners think differently before they ever act differently. Losers wait. Winners move. Losers talk about what they're going to do someday. Winners decide and then figure it out along the way. You see, winners are not people who never lose. Winners are people who refuse to stay lost. That's the separation. That's the line. When you look at somebody who's winning, you often see the result and assume it came easy. You see the success, the confidence, the momentum. But you don't see the mornings they woke up scared. You don't see the nights they stayed up worrying. You don't see the failures that stacked up behind them like bricks in a wall. Winners build themselves out of those bricks. Losers sit in front of them and complain about the wall. That's the difference. Same bricks, same obstacles, different response. You have to understand something about failure. Failure is not the opposite of winning. Failure is the path to winning. Every winner you admire has a story full of rejection, embarrassment, loss, and doubt. The difference is that they kept going when it stopped being fun. They kept going when nobody clapped. They kept going when the results didn't match the effort. Losers stop when the excitement fades. Winners continue when the reality sets in. That's why success is rare, because persistence is rare. Another thing that separates winners from losers is responsibility. Winners take it. Losers avoid it. When something goes wrong, losers look outward. They blame the system, the economy, the boss, the family, the timing, the world. Winners look inward first. They ask, what could I have done better? What can I learn? Where can I improve? That question alone changes everything. Because the moment you take responsibility, you gain power. If it's your fault, you can fix it. If it's everyone else's fault, you're stuck. That's why blame feels comfortable but keeps you trapped. Responsibility feels heavy but sets you free. Winners also understand sacrifice. They understand that you cannot have everything at once. You cannot chase comfort and greatness at the same time. You cannot sleep on your dream and expect it to wake up. There are going to be days when you're tired, when you'd rather rest, when you'd rather choose ease. Winners choose effort anyway. They pay the price early so they can collect the reward later. Losers want the reward now and the effort later. Life doesn't work like that. Life pays in proportion to what you invest before anyone else sees the return. I want you to think about discipline for a moment, not motivation. Motivation is emotional. It comes and goes. Discipline is structural. It stays. Winners build discipline so their actions don't depend on their feelings. Losers wait to feel ready. And let me tell you something, ready is a myth. Nobody feels ready to do something that stretches them. Nobody feels ready to risk embarrassment. Nobody feels ready to step into uncertainty. Winners act anyway. They move while afraid. They try while unsure. They begin before confident. That's why they get ahead. Because movement creates clarity. Action creates belief. Waiting creates doubt. There is also a difference in how winners and losers see time. Losers see time as something to spend. Winners see time as something to invest. Every hour matters differently to them. Winners understand that days become years and years become lives. They don't waste weeks complaining about what didn't work. They extract lessons and move forward. Losers replay disappointment until it becomes identity. Winners treat yesterday as data. Losers treat yesterday as destiny. That shift alone separates entire futures. Another truth is that winners build themselves daily. They don't rely on occasional bursts of effort. They rely on consistent, often invisible work. They practice when nobody watches. They improve in small increments. They understand that greatness is not a leap, it's an accumulation. Losers want transformation without repetition. They want change without process. But process is where winners live. They fall in love with the climb, not just the view. Because they know something powerful. If you become the kind of person who can reach the top becomes inevitable. Winners also choose their environment carefully. They protect their mindset. They surround themselves with people who challenge them, not comfort them. They seek growth, not validation. Losers stay where it's familiar, even if it's limiting. They prefer agreement over improvement. But you cannot grow beyond the voices you listen to. If everyone around you reinforces small thinking, you will think small. Winners expose themselves to bigger standards, bigger expectations, bigger possibilities. That exposure stretches belief, and belief changes behavior. One of the most defining separations between winners and losers is resilience. How quickly do you recover? How long do you stay down? Life is not going to spare anyone from setbacks, but winners have a shorter emotional recovery time. They feel disappointment, yes. They feel pain, yes. But they don't unpack and live there. They process and move. Losers build a home inside failure. Winners pass through it. That movement is everything, because momentum favors those who restart fastest. Winners also make peace with discomfort. They understand that growth feels awkward. Progress feels uncertain. Improvement feels clumsy at first. They don't interpret discomfort as a sign to stop. They interpret it as evidence they're stretching. Losers interpret discomfort as danger, so they retreat to what they already know. But what you already know can only produce what you already have. Winners accept temporary incompetence for permanent advancement. That trade changes lives. There's also something about belief that separates winners from losers. Winners believe before proof. Losers wait for proof before belief. But belief is what fuels the effort that creates proof. It's circular. If you wait to see results before committing, you'll never commit enough to produce results. Winners commit early. They invest in possibility. They act on faith in their own potential. That belief doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from decision. A decision that says, I may not be there yet, but I am capable of becoming more. Let me tell you another hard truth. Winners are willing to be misunderstood. They're willing to look foolish temporarily. They're willing to take paths that others question, because they're not living for approval. They're living for purpose. Losers shape their choices around perception. They ask, what will people think? Winners ask, what will this make possible? That difference changes risk tolerance. And risk tolerance changes opportunity. Most people don't fail because they try and lose. They fail because they never try enough to discover what they could have been. Winners also set standards for themselves that exceed their circumstances. They don't wait for external pressure to perform. They create internal expectations. They hold themselves accountable when nobody else does. That internal standard becomes identity, and identity drives consistency. Losers depend on external enforcement, deadlines, supervision, consequences. Remove those and effort disappears. Winners carry their standard everywhere, alone or observed, tired or energized, seen or unseen. That's integrity of effort. Another separation lies in focus. Winners prioritize. They choose fewer goals and pursue them deeply. Losers scatter energy across many intentions without sustained follow-through. You cannot progress meaningfully in 10 directions at once. Depth creates mastery. Mastery creates advantage. Winners protect focus like a resource. They say no often so they can say yes fully. Losers say yes to everything and commit to nothing. That dilution prevents excellence. Winners also understand delayed gratification. They can endure the gap between effort and reward. They plant seeds without immediate harvest. Losers abandon the field when crops don't appear quickly. But almost everything worthwhile has a delay built into it. Skill takes time. Reputation takes time. Trust takes time. Financial growth takes time. Physical transformation takes time. Winners respect that timeline. They keep planting. They keep tending. They trust compounding. And compounding eventually looks like overnight success to outsiders. There is also courage. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Winners feel fear and move. Losers feel fear and freeze. That one behavioral difference accumulates across years into dramatically different lives. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Try again tomorrow." Winners listen to that whisper. Losers silence it with excuses. And excuses are seductive because they protect ego. But they also protect limitation. Winners measure themselves against potential. Losers measure themselves against comfort. Potential demands expansion. Comfort demands preservation. If your primary goal is to feel safe, you will avoid the very actions that produce growth. Winners accept temporary instability for long-term strength. They are willing to be beginners repeatedly. That humility is power, because every new level requires new learning. Losers want to appear competent more than they want to become competent. So they avoid situations where they might struggle, and avoidance freezes development. Let me tell you something deeply important. Winners don't outsource their future. They don't wait for rescue. They don't depend on perfect conditions. They create movement with what they have. They start before they're ready. They build before certainty. Losers postpone until circumstances improve. But circumstances rarely improve without action. Winners generate momentum that changes circumstances. Losers wait for circumstances to generate momentum. That reversal explains a lot of stalled lives. Winners also redefine losing. To them, losing is feedback, data, information about what didn't work. They extract lessons, adjust strategy, continue effort. Losers define losing as identity. I failed becomes I am a failure. That fusion is devastating, because when failure becomes identity, effort stops. Winners keep identity separate from outcome. They see themselves as learners in progress. That mindset protects persistence. There's also emotional regulation. Winners manage mood so it doesn't control behavior. They don't let a bad day cancel a good plan. Losers let emotion dictate action. If they feel discouraged, effort drops. If they feel bored, consistency breaks. But emotions fluctuate constantly. If behavior tracks emotion, progress becomes random. Winners anchor behavior to values and goals instead. They act according to commitment, not mood. That stability compounds. Winners also understand that self-talk matters. The voice in your head becomes the ceiling of your effort. Winners cultivate constructive inner dialogue. Not fantasy, but encouragement paired with responsibility. Losers rehearse doubt. They repeat narratives of limitation. I'm not ready. I'm not talented. I'm not lucky. Those narratives become self-fulfilling because belief shapes behavior and behavior shapes results. Change the voice and you change the trajectory. Let's talk about work ethic. Not just hours, but intensity and intention. Winners engage fully when they work. They focus, refine, iterate. Losers equate time spent with effort given, but distracted work produces weak outcomes. Deep work produces leverage. Winners seek leverage, skills, and actions that multiply impact. They learn continuously, they upgrade methods. They pursue excellence, not adequacy. Losers settle for acceptable, and acceptable rarely wins. Another separation is adaptability. Winners adjust when reality changes. They're flexible in strategy but firm in goal. Losers cling to familiar methods even when ineffective. They interpret change as threat instead of information, but environments evolve. Markets shift. Opportunities move. Winners track that movement and reposition. Losers stay fixed and get left behind. Adaptability is survival in motion. Winners also give themselves permission to want more. That may sound simple, but many people suppress ambition because it feels risky or selfish. Winners acknowledge desire. They set bold aims. They allow themselves to envision expansion. Losers downplay aspiration to avoid disappointment, but suppressed ambition becomes quiet regret. Winners risk disappointment for possibility. Losers accept stagnation for safety. I want you to hear this clearly. The gap between winners and losers is built daily, in small choices, in whether you practice or postpone, in whether you learn or defend, in whether you try again or withdraw. Those micro decisions accumulate. Nobody wakes up suddenly on either side. They walk there step by step, and the path is always available to shift. Because winning is not a fixed identity, it's a repeated behavior. If you want to cross that line, you don't need to transform overnight. You need to choose differently today. Take responsibility for one outcome. Do one difficult task you've been avoiding. Practice one skill intentionally. Learn one lesson from a recent mistake. Protect 1 hour for focused effort. Those acts signal to yourself that you're changing sides. And once behavior shifts, identity follows. You begin to see yourself differently. And that perception fuels further change. Remember this, winners are not special people. They are people who practice special behaviors long enough for them to look natural. Discipline becomes habit. Courage becomes reflex. Effort becomes normal. The extraordinary becomes ordinary through repetition. That's accessible to anyone willing to persist through the awkward phase where it still feels unnatural. Most people quit in that phase. Winners stay, and yes, there will be moments you slip, days you don't meet your standard, attempts that fail. That does not move you to the losing side unless you stop recommitting. Winners fall short and recommit quickly. They don't wait for Monday, next month, or next year. They reset now. That immediacy preserves momentum. Delay erodes it. You must also guard against comparison. Winners measure progress against their past self, not someone else's highlight reel. Comparison distorts reality. It makes you feel behind even when you're advancing. Losers let comparison drain motivation. Winners use it as information or ignore it entirely, because the only sustainable race is internal growth. Let me close with something powerful. The line between winners and losers is not drawn in talent, resources, or background. It is drawn in response. How do you respond to difficulty? How do you respond to delay? How do you respond to fear? How do you respond to failure? Those responses create patterns. Patterns create identity. Identity creates destiny. If you change response, you change destiny. That means the line is movable. It can shift today with a decision, with an action, with persistence. So when you leave here, don't ask whether you have what winners have. Ask whether you're willing to do what winners do, especially when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, and unseen, because that's where separation happens, quietly, daily, repeatedly. And over time, that repetition becomes a life that looks different, feels different, and stands as proof that the line was never fixed. It was always yours to cross. It was always yours to cross.